Eliza Beardy visits her brother's grave. She lays down tobacco and says a prayer. She didn't know her brother very well. The last time she saw him was in 1955 when she was loaded on a plane in her community, Garden Hill First Nation.
We were all just packed into those planes when we left. And I always said, just like being packed like a bunch of sardines in a sardine can.
She was brought to the Norway House Indian Residential School. Her brother Isaias didn't make it there.
They said that he had been sick and was taken to south for to get help with medication.
Isaias died at St. Boniface Hospital.
After he died, they didn't even tell my parents where he was buried. In those years, nobody went home when they died.
Beardy spent decades trying to find her brother, a search which led her to a numbered grave at Brookside Cemetery, plot number 215.
After 58 years, I said, we found you.
10 days later, the news broke that 215 unmarked graves were found at the former residential school in Kamloops. The fact it was the same number as her brother's grave shook Beardy to her core.
It's like as if we found 215 children. Little ones. And they never saw their parents.
Beardy mourns the loss of her childhood to residential school, but it wasn't just those institutions that devalued the lives of Indigenous children. The horror revealed in the callous treatment of children's bodies at residential schools also happened in hospitals.
It is absolutely very, very similar to the history of residential schools. The treatment is the same.
McCallum has been studying Indian hospitals and tuberculosis sanatoriums for years. In the 1960s, when First Nations children like Isaias were taken to hospital, they were considered wards of the state. But today, there's not much information on what happened to them after leaving their communities, including where those who died were buried.
They must have assumed that all people want to know where their loved ones are buried, but it just didn't occur to them for whatever reason to kind of write this down.
No more wandering around.
Today, when Beardy visits her brother's grave, she can't help but think of her parents. Whether their children left for residential school or to hospital, Beardy says they were devastated.
Every time you go and grab that child, put him on the plane, my mom's heart and my dad's heart, a piece of it was torn off.
The pain was too much to endure. Her parents died of heart conditions. They were lonely. Stephanie Cram, CBC News, Winnipeg.